We're off to the voice of the creative economy, thanks to Idealog. Idealog.co.nz. Vincent Heeringa, of course, it is. Morning, Vincent.
Good morning, Wammo.
Who's just extracting himself from holiday mode. I guess probably because you just felt so cheated by the weather these holidays that you just try to extend it out and say, no, I'm going to keep this going until we get some fine weather.
I am. What's wrong with that?
Well, no, nothing wrong at all. I totally sympathise. And so you've been doing a bit of reading over the holidays.
Well, like a lot of people, I imagine, I've been reading the Steve Jobs biography and feeling completely sort of betwixt, on the one hand, inspired by the example of his genius, kind of appalled by his bad behaviour, depressed at just how uncreative and unimaginative I seem to be by comparison.
Yeah,
so,
right.
you know, it's like, I love biographies. It's good to beat yourself around the head with them from time to time.
Yeah.
But one of the things that does make you reflect on is just your own children. For those that do have children anyway. And I've been asking my kids, you're big users of Apple gear and Microsoft gear, and we play games and such stuff. So how many of us actually take the hood off and pull them apart and hack them and wreck them and build our own stuff? And
Figure out how they work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the characteristics of Steve Jobs' childhood was that he was surrounded by engineers who would, they would build crystal radios, and it was just at the time when electronics was coming to life in Silicon Valley, and he was surrounded by people who were playing with stuff. They didn't play PlayStation; they built PlayStation.
Yeah.
And none of my kids have been exposed in any formal sense to computing of any kind. There's no programming taught in school as part of a formal program. It's an option. Computers are part of an option, but they're not exposed to coding or programming or computing of any kind. And it just got me quite exercised. I've been doing over the last months, been asking anyone who cares to be interested, what is the story with getting your kids taught about programming or computers at all? And there's nothing formal, Wammo, and there seems to be an enormous gap in our technical. I suppose it's just a kind of a love of technology. We're big users, but we're not manipulators.
Manipulators, yeah. And just going back to the sort of the physical side of technology, just thinking about that tinkering aspect and pulling things apart and seeing how they work. Maybe people don't do that so much these days, or kids don't do that so much these days because the product seems finished, whereas I suppose back in, say, the 80s, 70s, 60s, the products were more basic and it was quite easy to understand, much like cars were, in fact. You can't really pull apart a modern car these days and work out how it works because it's so complicated. You've got computers inside and whatnot, and the machinery isn't as simple as it was. That's just on the physical aspect.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. So things now are plastic welded rather than screwed together. So, you could unscrew, but, you still can bust things open. That works.
You can throw it off a building.
We've never had more tools at our disposal, particularly on the web for learning how to program and build things. And so, the result, Wammo, is that we have incredibly low, by comparison with our developed cousins, we have incredibly low rates of R&D in New Zealand. Something like 1.2% of GDP in New Zealand is committed to R&D, and only 40% of that is by private enterprise. And you compare that with Israel or America or Scandinavian countries, Taiwan and so forth, where sometimes as much as 70% of the R&D spend, which is more like 5% of GDP, is committed by private enterprise. And the result is that we are a nation of bus drivers and bartenders. We're not building the buses or building the computers that are used from the cash register. So that's going to make us poor.
Do you think the ultra-fast broadband, which finally is starting to roll out this year in various places, do you think that's going to make a difference?
Only if it's combined with an effort to re-energise R&D as an exercise within business. So it needs to be articulated particularly I think by the telcos, what this means for business. And I see bugger all of that. I don't see anyone demonstrating what ultra-fast broadband can actually mean for business and encouraging better use of it. And the second thing, Wammo, is we need to, it's all about the kids. We need to inspire a generation of engineers and tinkerers who are going to rip the top off things and start mucking around.
Yeah.
And I don't see it happening in my own little circle. I'm happy to be corrected, but we've got RockQuest, which I love, but where's GeekQuest?
Well, that's right. And there was, I did see a news report over the summer. There was some, I can't remember where it was specifically, but there was a summer school for school-aged students who could spend 3 days developing their own app. I think it was for
that
iOS.
Was AUT, wasn't it?
It was AUT, yeah, which was very cool, and it seemed like they were getting a lot out of it. So that could be translated into school programs.
Exactly.
But of course, it comes down to equipment as well, doesn't it?
Well, does it? I mean, it doesn't take anything to open your browser and start programming in HTML or in XML. I think there's lots of excuses you could come up with, but I'd be interested to hear from people out there in radio land who can perhaps correct me. I'm very happy to be corrected about the state of it in schools, but I suspect that computing, and I learnt computing in third form. I learnt how to pull apart a computer and do BASIC. It just seemed to me to be kind of a tool that was required for the modern age. And what's happened to that, Wammo?
What has happened to that? Shaky fist. And we'll move on. Thanks very much, Vincent.
Thanks, Wammo.
Vincent at idealogue.co.nz. Check out the latest Idealogue.